Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Familiar with the Matter. Today we'll be discussing. I think I've gone my Sean Connery route all of a sudden. We'll be discussing the British Royal Navy with a person who has some experience in that realm of things. Irate Bear. Hello, Bear.
Hello, Scribe. How are you?
Doing all right. So when I first came up with the idea for this show, three people came to my mind as individuals I already knew had knowledge of things that I had absolutely no idea about. One was Tailed Feature, about being a teacher in education. One was Diesel Dave, about being a long haul trucker. And the third was you, and having been in the Navy. And so I'm very glad, finally, to have you on the show to talk about something I have absolutely no idea about.
Okay. I don't mind answering any of your questions, mate.
I appreciate that. So hello, everyone in the chat. Hope everyone's having a good weekend. Hello to the people who are here. First off, hello, Functional. Hello, Iron Pool. Steve Luzon. All You Need. Duck Dog. The gayest person on YouTube. Diesel Dave himself. Jen T. Maxey. Hello. And, of course, Irate Bear. So just so you guys know, if you have any questions for Bear or myself as we proceed, feel free to super chat. But if you have questions in general, there will be a Q&A portion near the end of the show. Experience has taught me these go for about maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so before my brain runs out of questions. But you never know. We might come off on a tangent that takes us longer, and then we'll go for about 20, 30 minutes, if that, on Q&A. So about an hour, thereabouts.
Should I give a synopsis of my...
Well, that's what I was going to ask this. Yeah, just as a high level, what makes you, Irate Bear, familiar with the matter of the British Royal Navy?
Okay, so when I was 17, I joined up the Royal Navy a month before my 18th birthday, or rather 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, the 6th of March 2006. Joined originally as a operator mechanic warfare. That's what the branch was originally called when I joined. Went through the 8 weeks of basic training, which included everything you can imagine: drill, learning about the Navy, learning the ranks and ratings, learning how to be a naval firefighter, learning how to obviously do things like plugging holes up should you ever find yourself in a position where your compartments are filling up with water. Things like assault courses, obstacle courses, your typical fitness stuffs in the swimming pool, and obviously running around like a madman. Team building, and just learning how to look after your gear and stuff like that. And obviously a butt ton of drill on top of all that. Went through a phase 2 training. Now, when I was halfway through phase 2, which was at the Maritime Warfare School, which is called HMS Collingwood, which is in Fareham near Portsmouth, they changed my branch and they actually split it into 2. The operator mechanic of the legacy operator mechanic warfare branch was split into 2. It was originally operating radar and obviously handling of upper deck weapons, so things like the general purpose machine gun, the SA-80, the light support weapon, and a few others as well that I was actually never trained to do. And of course, repairing, the repairing side of things, a weapon engineer branch, so like repairing radar, repairing electronic warfare, repairing guns, all that kind of stuff. I stayed in the warfare side of things, which was changed to Able Seaman Warfare Specialist, which was obviously operating radar. And I joined my ship. Oh, when was it now? Was it October of 2006? Or it might have been a little bit earlier than that. And I joined up as a radar operator about, I don't know, 4-5 months afterwards. I was offered the chance to go on an electronic warfare course. And I passed that with flying colors and became an electronic warfare operator, operating the ship's early warning system and the command support system, providing information to command about various platforms that you would come across whilst on deployment or in operational theatre. I was also a part of the boarding party crew, so I'd board other ships as well whenever we took part in boarding operations or interdiction operations, as they're called. Worked with your Navy, worked with NATO, took part in massive NATO operations, took traveled all over the world as well. The Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean, Europe, Northern Europe, obviously the South Atlantic, West Africa, America. Been all over the shop, really. That's my summary, mate. That's my summary. So I served 5.5 years.
Well, if that's a summary, well, thanks guys for joining us. That is the. So did you have any family members previously who'd been in the military?
Yeah, my mum, dad, and cousin were all in the army. My dad was a grenadier guard, so you've probably seen them with the big bearskin hats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad was one of them. He also fought the IRA, and my mum was in the Royal Logistics Corps. Yeah, back when it was called that.
So how is it that rather than sort of following in the footsteps, so to speak, of going into the army, that you ended up deciding to go for the Navy?
I wanted to get something out of it, and going down the infanteer route wasn't really my cup of tea. As I said, I mentioned operator mechanic warfare.
Mm-hmm.
When that job was offered, I didn't know they were going to change it. They were going to split the branches. And if they had kept it as it was, and I had had the original training, and then gone on to like pass the on-the-job training, I would have had some nice qualifications in engineering. But unfortunately, I didn't get to do that.
Mm. So now the closest that I ever came in America to getting near the military is we had a test in high school they gave us called the, and I'm probably going to fuck this up, it was called the ASVAB, which is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. And I took this test, and they came back at me and said, wow, you'd be perfect for military intelligence. And I went to my dad, who had been in the Air Force, and I said, hey, Dad, you know, they gave me this test, and they said that I'd be great for like military intelligence. And of course, I'm a kid at the time in high school. I'm thinking of, you know, military intelligence, like spies and stuff like that. And he looked at me and says, you are not cut out for the military. Don't do that. That whole thing is a complete scam. And this is coming from my father, who was in, you know, Vietnam, and he like was in Turkey and all this other stuff. And I always wondered, like, what is it? Is it a sense of patriotism? Was it a sense of you didn't feel like there was anything more specific in the civilian world that drew you to that? I mean, what drove you specifically to want to pursue whatever branch, but the military versus just going off into the private sector kind of thing?
Oh, wow. Probably my mum, to be honest. I mean, I expressed interest in the military when I was at a very young age. I guess it was wanting to be a part of something bigger than myself, patriotism, wanting to, I guess, wanting to handle guns and things like that. Really, it's like, oh,
you want to blow shit up, basically.
Yeah. It's funny because I ended up joining the branch that doesn't do that kind of thing. You know, I didn't pursue the gunner route. I pursued the electronic warfare route.
And what did your family think, being sort of a army lineage, when you said you wanted to go into the Navy? Was there any sort of like, because I don't, I mean, in America, there's kind of a cliche about the rivalry or the and maybe friendly to otherwise antipathy between the Army and the Navy. I don't know if that's such a thing exists in England or Britain.
Oh yeah, there's definitely competition there. Absolutely. How you get it, you get a hell of a lot of tribalism between naval branches. You know, that there's lots of sub branches, and there's always arguing about who's better and, you know, who offers up more for their service. I didn't have any of that kind of banter with my mum. Didn't really, you know what my relationship was like with my dad. And my cousin, hadn't seen my cousin for years, really, so I didn't have that thing with the family. Or anything like that, but I certainly had it with Royal Marines that I met, and I had an old army mate who I went to high school with. Had a bit of bants with him as well.
So how I mean, I don't know if this makes any sense, but how difficult was it to qualify to join the Navy in Britain? I mean, what exactly are the steps you have to go through? Did you go to a recruiting center? Was it through your school? I mean, how does that work?
It was different for every branch, mate. We do things by recruitment offices
Mm-hmm.
around the country. They do go around, and like they go around to schools and stuff, and they show like 16-year-olds, information, give them information about joining up. No matter what the service is, they all do that. They also go around to like big public affairs, big public events, and do that kind of recruitment as well. You go into the recruitment office, you go in, you speak to a recruitment officer. That they offer you up a bunch of options. Really, they try to, depending on what type of office you go into, depends on which way they'll try and push you. I've been told that a lot of like the army guys, they apparently they get bonuses for recruiting people into their regiments, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was the case with the Navy guys, to be honest with you. Oh, they sit you down, you have a chat with the recruitment officer. They give you a butt ton of information. You have a good read. The next step is to fill out all the paperwork. You have a medical to make sure that you haven't got any, obviously, like diseases or anything like that,
Sure.
or any illnesses that would impede your ability to serve. A fitness test is different for all three services. Some of them also do what's called a selection process. The Army and the Royal Marines both do that. I don't know if the RAF does it. The Navy doesn't. Some of them will offer you up the chance to do like a week's work experience with like a regiment somewhere. So you'll go off and you'll do like obviously lightened versions of what they actually do in their particular branch or regiment or whatever. And once you've done that, then you get given a join date. Once you've got past all the paperwork, they do a background check on you, and then they give you a date that you join up. They give you a list of things you need. They give you a train ticket, and off you go.
And so just in general, once you've gotten on the train, you go off. What's the chain of events between sort of basic training to where they figure out where you'd best fit? I mean, like I said, I took the ASVAB here, and they told me, oh, you have a penchant for this, and you'll be best along this career path if you were to join the military. Where do they sort of winnow you out and to figure out where to put you?
What they do is in the Royal Navy anyway is they'll make you sit a test before you actually go off.
Okay.
Go off to phase 1 training. And if you pass it, then you're suitable for that branch. But when you get to phase 2 training, and this happened to a few of the lads, what they'll do is they'll relook at all the lads' test scores and their qualifications, like what do they get in high school, and they'll then make an offer to a lot of them to change branches at the very start of phase 2 training.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like there was a lad who was in my class in phase 2 who was like he actually was punching down with his attempt to join up. They offered him to go join the Navy Air Fleet.
Okay.
He took it. He just went off and he did the training for it.
So, and that's just within the Navy, or could you like be discovered like you'd be better off for the Army, and we're going to send you over there now?
Well, no, I don't think it would work like that.
Okay.
It would only work in the particular service that you're in. Switching services is quite a drawn out thing,
Okay.
Yeah.
So when they
can transfer though, I have heard of that happening.
Oh, you can transfer between branches.
Between services.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a long drawn out process though.
So what does basic training look like in the Royal Navy?
Well, at least when I went through,
Mm-hmm.
The basic training's done at a place called HMS Raleigh down in Plymouth. Like day 1, week 1, you get all your injections. You all get tested for chlamydia.
Oh, fun.
In fact, day 1, week 1 for me, there was a lad who actually got booted out the same day because they found out he was allergic to bees.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they didn't find that in the initial screening process.
Interesting.
So they were like, right, here's a train ticket, go home. But yeah, you do like another medical kind of thing. You get issued your uniforms, stuff like that. You get showed how to like look after it, how to press it and stuff. You get your bedding. You get shown how your locker's supposed to be, how your bed needs to be, and you get explained to you what's expected of you. One of the first things you do is kind of like learn how to march, and they kind of put you into a routine within the first 2 days.
So is there really that much? And I'm just going off of movies and things. Is there much difference between, or maybe you don't know, but the basic training for the Navy in that sense versus the Army?
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah.
Okay.
Naval basic training is probably the shortest of the 4 different. I'm including Royal Marines. They are a part of the Navy, but their training is different to everybody else's as well. The Navy itself, obviously, you have to learn all the rank structure. You learn about what type of ships there are. You learn how to look after yourself properly, how to look after your kit. Yeah, you first you get regimented. Then you start learning about naval things. You learn. I know you're gonna laugh. You learn some seamanship.
Oh my god, that's gross.
You learn all the stuff that has to do with ropes and like how to like get a ship alongside and whatnot. You learn firefighting. You learn damage control, which damage control, by the way, is just the most fun thing ever.
How so? What does that mean?
They have what I can only describe to you as a theme park ride.
Okay.
It's a big metal box on hydraulics, right? That's constantly dripping. That's what you first see. You just see this hoofing box thing. It's dripping water at the bottom of it. It's sat on hydraulics. You're like, what the heck is that? And you see a little sign. The one in Raleigh is called Havoc. You're like, we got to go in there. And you go inside, and it looks like a warship. Inside it has compartments. It has like ladders, doors, all the type of like shippy things that you'd expect. And what it does, they turn it on. It starts rocking from side to side like you're at sea. And then you get like there's a main broadcast system. So all you hear over the main broadcast is LX is set 090, brace, brace, brace. And then you hear an explosion. And then water just starts pissing out from everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have like 2 teams. One has to block the holes in the mess deck. That's living space. One has to block the holes in the engine room space.
Gotcha.
And you go down there, and the compartment fills about 3/4 of the way up with water. It's rocking from side to side. You're having to hold your breath to plug the holes in the deck. Like the last time I did it, I had to shove my entire body into a locker just to block one bloody hole that was in the bulkhead. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's crazy, but it's fun. Yeah.
Now, what kind of, let's see, how can I put this? There's a certain stereotype of personality that finds themselves attracted to military service, and specifically branches in the military. Did what's if there was a stereotype of your average Navy British I don't know, officer, well, not officer necessarily, but just the British Navy, what's the British Navy attitude, if there is one?
Oh, well, I have lots of different personalities that I met. But the ones who were most suited, I'd say, were I don't know. They just love, like, some guys just loved it. They were quite sporty individuals. They like to drink. I can't really describe the personalities to you as such, because there was such a mix of different people from all different kinds of backgrounds that some of them loved it, some of them hated it. And they all had very, very different types of personalities, I guess. It'd be hard for me to kind of describe it to you. I suppose cool, calm-headed people who just want to get on tend to be like the better ratings amongst the lads.
This is a bit of a tangent, but what is if you could encapsulate it, what is the general attitude of towards military in general in Britain? Because in America, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, in a lot of cases, you get sort of two two mindsets. On the one hand, it's sort of like you have a lot of respect for people who put their lives on the line and dedicate their lives to effectively what is national service or public service. On the other hand, there's also a mentality of seeing military service as, and again, this is a generalization. This is not necessarily from me, but there is this mentality that in the absence of having any other employable skills, the military is sort of like the alternate resort to actually finding a job or something. So is there any kind of like, I don't know, a mentality of conflict between outlook on the military in Britain like that?
Oh, it's been very mixed over the last couple of years, Scribe. I spoke to my sister. My sister is like, she's like one of the top like recruitment people at her company. Like, she earns a butt ton of money every year, cheeky bitch. But I spoke to her recently and she said, look, my company's after military people. I'm like, huh, really? I'm surprised at that. And I spoke to my job center, and I don't know whether you heard about this, but I was offered a job not that long ago just purely because I was ex-military. They didn't care about any of my qualifications or anything.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what the general attitude is. I mean, it's definitely improved overall. I mean, ever since we kind of went into Afghanistan and Iraq, the public's attitude towards the military has been one of, okay, let's try to help the military boys out. You know, let's loads of charities that were specifically aimed at veterans or current serving members were created during this time. General attitude, I would say it's just general mix. Like the people in the armed forces, I know this is the case, especially in America. We'll get like discounts at places like your guys get way better discounts than what ours do. Students are treated better than military personnel in terms of like getting discounts at companies and stuff. I would say it's much more positive now than what it was.
Okay, because I've and some of this is just referential to me because I wasn't alive at the time, but the general attitude towards the military seems to coincide with the current attitude towards whatever military conflict we're involved with. So like if the war is popular, the military is held to a high esteem. If it's not, it's not. But I don't know. I didn't know if there was some general sort of overarching thought about the military in Britain, because it seems to have shifted over the decades here in America. Like World War II, military personnel were, practically gods among men, of course. And over time, that's kind of, at least I think, and again, this is just me talking, and in different parts of the country have different attitudes, but just seems to have diminished, sort of like a side thing, I suppose, or sort of like a last resort sort of career. Do you think that, at least in your experience, that the military or the Navy in particular was a good ground for preparation for civilian life and careers thereafter?
No, I think that a lot of people, not obviously all, I think a lot of people come out and they do amazing in civilian, in civvy, what we call civvy street. I think there's a lot of lads who do fantastic when they come out. They're not phased by anything. And of course, I'm not talking about like military action. I'm just talking about living like 5+ years in a regimented lifestyle.
Sure.
For me, it was difficult. I couldn't it took me a long time to get used to it. Because like when you're serving, your responsibility is pretty much your job and your immediate things. Like it doesn't matter if you blow your entire paycheck at the start of the month, you're still going to have a roof over your head,
right?
And food in your belly. Well, I mean, that was certainly the case in the first couple of years. They brought in this thing called pay as you dine, where you have to basically pay for food now rather than them just taking money for the meals. So I guess you would probably have that extra responsibility, but it's very difficult. I found it difficult anyway. I know a lot of lads that came out and found they struggled to get used to civilian life and having all these extra responsibilities put on them. Like suddenly you've got to pay rent.
So did the Navy provide any kind of like transitionary guidance from life in the Navy to being a civilian again when you
they do provide like severance packages, dependent on how long you've been in. I was like a couple months short of like a decent package, if you've been in like for years and years and years, you'll get a really good package. Like they'll pay for you to go on courses so you can get qualified in something else. Like you go off and you go do like a health and safety course so you can pursue a career in that, or get taught how to drive forklifts or whatever. For me, all they gave me was assistance to write a resume. And that was it. I was like, oh, all right then. Whatever.
So there wasn't any sort of like here's how to, there wasn't any education in there like here's how to manage your money or here's how to do X, Y, and Z, sort of like the basics out of. I understand some of this stuff is supposed to be taught in like the regular schools and things, but I don't know if there was any sort of like get ready for civilian life kind of stuff that they at least provided or mandated as you got out of there.
Not really official for me anyway. They give you like a pack to kind of read and get into, and that's supposed to be helpful, but you need to serve a bit longer and then they'll basically do more.
Okay. Thank you, Cryptic. Transition to civilian life blow in both countries. Yeah, like I say, I'm talking to Bear about the British Navy, but I complete honesty, I don't know that much about the ins and outs of the American military that much either. I mean, I have family members who have been in it, but their knowledge is decades old at this point, so I don't know what changes have been made. So what was your
if I could just carry on to kind of reiterate the point.
Oh, sure.
Like when you're, especially in the Navy, the food is cooked for you.
Mm-hmm.
You have a roof over your head. You're told when to go see the dentist, for example, and you're like told what, unless you get ill, you're told like when to go get checkups, and like everything that you do, you're pretty much told to do.
Right.
You know what's expected of you. A lot of it, a lot of it's done for you. You know, like the only things you have to really do yourself is obviously do your job. Obviously, make sure your kit is all good. Make sure your bed is changed. And make sure you look after your body. That's pretty much it, really. Unless some of the lads do go on to like buy their own houses or rent houses and whatever, so they kind of get used to it because they're like lifers, you know. A lot of the lads who aren't, I imagine, probably find it a bit of a shock when they come out.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wonder if that in some cases doesn't sort of set or condition people to have a certain expectation of how life is by the time they get out. Maybe they're institutionalized. They don't know how to adapt to a civilian life where they're not regimented and being told what to do every day.
Yeah.
So specifically, so what was the name of the ship that you served? I mean, and I don't know if any of this stuff is like classified or you can't say anything.
No, I'll tell you if it's classified.
Okay, all right. So what ship were you, how did getting assigned to a ship work? Did they just sort of like say, okay, you're done with training, this is what you're most qualified for, here's your ship?
Well, what they did was when you went to phase 2 training, the operator mechanics, or what would later become the warfare specialists, were divided into various groups completely randomly, not really based on anything. It was completely random. They were sent off to do training on specific types of radar user interfaces. Like I was trained to use, I can't even remember the bloody name of it now. I was trained to use a radar system that is specific to Type 45 destroyers. Sorry, Type 42 destroyers, aircraft carriers, and the LPDs and the LPH. Whereas some of the other guys were sent off to train on the radar systems they use on Type 22s and Type 23 frigates, for example. So that was completely random. And and obviously I trained on one system, and then when I finished, they gave us a bunch of ships to choose from.
Okay.
That had spaces, and I chose HMS Gloucester, which is a Type 42 Batch 3 destroyer.
And which is the picture of what will be the thumbnail for this stream by the time that we're all done with. Because I made sure to look up. I was like, okay, I got to find the specific kind of ship that Bear was serving on. And so what did you do on that ship, and how many different places in the world did you end up on that ship?
Well, able seaman has a lot of jobs. Their primary job is what they train to do in phase 2 training. So originally I was trained to be a surface, what was that? It's been so friggin' long. Was not surface picture supervisor, but I used to spend a great deal of time on the surface radar. Although my primary job was air radar,
Mm-hmm.
especially during action stations, and also upper deck weapons crews. I was also a bosun's mate, which is an armed sentry, so like kind of like a security guard, where you do 6 hours up on usually on the flight deck, where you'd obviously patrol the ship from up there. You'd ID people as they come on. You'd make announcements over the main broadcast system, things like that. I was also obviously sometimes I would be a firefighter on duty, slash damage control, so like plugging holes if there was a flood or anything like that. Obviously I'd get stitched up to go clean a lot of the time. You'd be given a specific part of ship that you'd have to maintain. So one part of the upper deck and 2 what we called flats on 2 deck. So that would be 2 compartments that you'd have to maintain, make sure they're clean, make sure the deck is polished to a very high standard. And of course, when you're leaving harbor and coming into harbor, you would obviously handle the ropes on that specific part of ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you like the regimented life?
Sometimes. there was a period in my naval career when I was what we call a naval orphan. I had no girlfriend. I had no responsibilities. I had no reason to go home. And there was probably about a year where I just loved it, you know. I just rammed my head into it. I was becoming a senior lad. I was good at my job, and whenever we got time off, I'd go get smashed with the lads.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I think if you're good at something, you tend to enjoy it more.
So, where all did you travel? I know you've got some photos that you can share of different places that you ended up. So I'll.
That's not really enough, though. I'll show those pictures at the end if that's all right, mate.
Sure, that's fine.
I'll tell you where I've been. I've been to Belgium, France, Greece, Italy, an archipelago of islands off the coast of West Africa called Cape Verde, 2 islands off there. The Falklands, South Georgia, which is 200 nautical miles southeast of the Falklands, 200 nautical miles north of Antarctica. Lots of icebergs around there. I've been to America.
Oh my gosh, you've been to America.
That's right. I've been to Florida.
Florida, that's kind of America. I guess.
And I've been to Manhattan, New York as well.
Diesel Dave asks, so why did you leave? I was going to get to that later, but we can talk about that now, I suppose, if you'd like.
Well, I'll finish saying where I've been.
Okay, sure.
I've been to Trinidad and Tobago.
And Tobago.
Been all around the UK as well. I've been to Chile, been to Brazil. Been to Denmark. It escapes me. Some of the places. I've been to quite a few countries.
Have you learned any additional languages or a little bit here and there to be able to function?
No. Whenever we went to countries, we'd look at like a taxi driver and go, "Oi, disco!" like that.
The universal language.
Yeah, or make hand gestures at them saying we wanted to go get drunk somewhere. Diesel Dave, why did I leave? It was a very stupid decision. A very, very stupid decision. I wish I'd stayed.
Really?
Before my last deployment, which was 7 months long, I came to a crossroads, and I had the opportunity to leave my ship and go do something land-based.
Right.
And it would have involved doing things like jamming communications and things like that. And I decided to stay on my ship like a fucking idiot. And went on 7 months deployment. I didn't really like the last deployment very much. It was just awful. It was over Christmas, over New Year's. Down the Falklands. The Falklands is just a dump, by the way, guys. There's no trees there. In fact, there's like 10 trees planted by the army that have warped because of the wind. There's not a lot there at all, guys. You either become an alcoholic or a super fit guy in the Falklands. I'd manage to do both.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, I used to be very fit back then as well. I left because I thought the grass was greener on the other side, and I thought I'd come out and it'd be all good in the hood. And I based off the entire experience off of one ship, and I really shouldn't have done that. I should have given it a couple more years, and I came out at the wrong time as well, man. And it's just such a bad decision, such a bad decision.
So, do you still keep up with what's going on with the Navy and the military in general?
Not really. The Navy's changed quite a bit since I left. Like, they've even changed uniforms now.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And they have new ships now as well. I see some stuff in the news from time to time, and I do read it. Yeah, kind of like the Faroe and Shetland Islands, Jogvan or Yogvan, I assume. Yeah, the Falklands is just awful. But yeah, whenever I see it in the news, I do have a quick read of it, see what's going on. I mean, my ship decommissioned the same day that I decommissioned.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with any former shipmates and things like that?
A couple of lads I do, yeah.
How are they doing?
They're doing okay. A lot of them have come out.
Okay.
A lot of them have come out. Some of them served longer than I did. They managed to do a course in something, and they're doing okay. Well, I mean, at least they're pretending to do okay.
Has anything you learned in the military been useful to you in civilian life?
Oh, I suppose when you join up, you tend to learn what you're good at and where your weaknesses are, and like you're kind of pushed. So you kind of try to understand what type of personality you really are, and what things you like and what things you don't like. I think I learned that, I have a long way to go in terms of growing up, at least back then anyway, like maturing as a person. I learned that I was very good, that the more chaotic the environment, the better I was. Okay. I learned that. That was definitely one of my strengths. Other than that, really, not really, dude. Like the things that they taught me, the things that I did as a job, you can't really transfer them to civilian life. Like the electronic warfare, the branch that I was in the UK, there's only a very, very small handful of places you can transfer that to.
Well, yeah, but I mean, learning that you can keep a cool head under, chaotic situations. That transfers a whole bunch of things, like being I don't know, office manager or a paramedic or something like that.
Oh yeah. Well, in that case, then yeah, I would say that was the case. Yeah, I learned that I could keep my head cool under extreme pressure. Certainly.
Okay, and this is, I mean, two questions. They variously apply to the different shows that I've done. What is the most exciting thing that, or amazing thing that you've seen or experienced while you were in the Navy?
Probably South Georgia.
Okay.
It's barely touched by humanity. There's like a whaling station there. There's a science station. That's pretty much it. It was like we obviously couldn't come alongside because there's no port.
Right.
So you had to go in via seaboat, and you step onto this beach, and it's like stepping into a David Attenborough documentary.
Yeah, when you before the stream started, when you mentioned, just for people to know, when you said South Georgia, my immediate thought was to Shackleton's expedition back then, and for those of you that don't know, there's a great documentary out there called The Endurance, narrated by Liam Neeson, that talks about Shackleton's expedition. If you don't know the details behind Shackleton and his polar expedition, holy shit, dude! That story at the point in history where it happened, the technology as it was, and what those men went through. I won't spoil it for you, but holy shit. But you were actually down in South Georgia. You went to see where all that happened, kind of, for part of it.
Yeah, I went to Ernest Shackleton's grave. I didn't do it, but a couple of lads, what they did was to challenge themselves physically and mentally. They went on Shackleton's walk.
Oh, right.
Which is like one walk. It's like you walk from one side of the island to the other, and you have to pretty bad conditions.
Yes, pretty bad. It's just, well, that's pretty mildly, but yeah.
Considering that was their winter.
Yeah.
the first time we were there, which was just awful. There's actually a picture. I didn't put it in the file for this one, but there's a picture of one of the lads I have where half of his face is just wind burned, just bright red. It's like,
yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, multiply that by 10,000 and you've got what was going on with Shackleton and all that.
Oh, yeah. They didn't have proper gear to protect themselves, you know.
Not back then.
Yeah. A fun fact for you as well, Ernest Shackleton was the person who discovered the Falklands.
Yes, that is true.
So when the Argentinians minge and moan, saying that we should give them the Falklands, actually, we were the first to discover it. The French took it and abandoned it. The Spanish took it and abandoned it. Then we took it and then we kept it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's ours.
And alternately, what was the most stressful and or scary situation you found yourself in during the time in the Navy?
There was a time when we were doing something called basic operational sea training. Consider it like sea basic training for the entire ship's company, but you do it most of it all out at sea with an already fully trained, fully experienced crew. And you get these guys on called FOSTs, Flag Officer Sea Training Staff.
Okay.
And they come on and they run you through like pretty much every scenario that a warship can go through. It was during that period that I was upper deck weapons crews, and we were leaving Plymouth at the time and heading back out to sea. And the officer of the watch, who was just an incompetent dick splash, called a alarm surface portside safeguard. Now, what that means is safeguard is a word that's used when the safeguard rule is enforced, like during BOSS, for example. You only use it when something real's happening. So, like during BOSS, you'll hear like fire, 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 fire in the galley location marking 2 November. Whereas if it was real, you'd hear safeguard, 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 fire, fire, fire. You get the gist of it. And he called a safeguard on this surface threat. And I was upper deck weapons crew on the flight deck with a GPMG and 200 rounds. I was like, what? And I'm like, that's a yacht.
Yeah.
And I lost my temper. And I think that was the only time that I have ever managed to scream at a bunch of officers over the main broadcast system from the flight deck. They were all on the bridge. I was like, confirm safeguard, sir. I kept saying it over and over again. They kept ignoring me to the point where I started swearing at them. And then they're like, no, it's not a safeguard. I was like, for fuck's sake, you could have said that.
Oh, jeez.
Dicks. That was like, really, dude? Like, the GPMGs on the bridge wing are command and control weapons.
Right.
So, whereas the rest of them are all like, weapons free. So, if they had ordered the port bridge wing to fire upon that yacht, they would have had to. And then me, not having the communication needed, probably would have, loaded up my GPMG, cocked it, and started firing.
Oh, jeez.
No, the scary moments. I mean, there were some pretty shady people walking around in Brazil, I tell you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that was back then before they cleaned up the streets. You could hear gunshots from the harbor.
Right.
Some of the lads actually got robbed at gunpoint. They were like dead people in the streets and shit back then.
Oh,
yeah, it's pretty grim. Scary moments. Not really.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's not a bad thing.
When we were in hurricane weather, that was pretty awful.
So let's say hypothetically there's somebody listening.
Oh yeah. Okay. The time I got crushed in a hatch. I got crushed in the hatch, not to the point of bone breaking.
Right.
If I hadn't have had anybody to help me, it might have been worse actually. We were transitioning through the Irish Sea, and the Irish Sea tends to get a little bit rough and windy. And they were like, "Oh, you go close the hatch." And like a fucking idiot, I tried to close the hatch from the inside and not out and close it, and the hatch is dead heavy.
Right.
And I try to stand on this. It's the steepest ladder on ship, and I try to lower the freaking hatch whilst also trying to squeeze myself under it. And the wind hit it, and my arms just gave out, and it hit me on the stomach.
Oh no!
My ass hit the lip of the hatch. Really hurt.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I managed to get it off myself, and it was helped like down by one of the petty officers. But as I lowered it, that the metal handle cracked me on the top of my head, nearly
Mm,
knocked my ass out.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was a bit unpleasant. I had loads of accidents myself.
Were you that clumsy?
Yeah, I fell down ladders all the time, mate. There was a time I fell down a ladder when coming back from a shower, and all I had were my flip flops, my towel, and my wash bag. And my
Uh,
towel came off as I went down the ladder.
no.
Yeah. And I smacked my head on the not a wooden panel, a metal panel
Hey,
at the bottom. Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't die from the accidents I had.
getting knocked in the head a few times might explain a few things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's say there's somebody listening who's considering joining the Navy. What, if any, sort of advice would you give them ahead of time that you've learned after the fact that might be in assistance to it?
I would say do your research properly. Do not let the recruitment officer try to push you in one direction, because they do that, and they do get paid for pushing you to specific branches or regiments or whatever. And
Right.
that's across the board. Doesn't matter what service you go into, do your research first, because they will push you to join whatever they're involved with or whatever their boss has told them to push towards. Do your research, find out what jobs there are. If you're in a position where you want a specific type of job but they're not recruiting for it, wait. Don't go do something else just because you really, really want to get in now, unless you want to do that. Do your research and get fit beforehand, and try to speak to people who are already serving. Not people who have served, people who are already serving, because they're already in the fleet and they can tell you what's going on and what life is like right now. And don't just ask one person, because all matlows, that's British sailors, by the way, because all matlows are whingy bastards, and they'll make it worse than it seems, or they'll make it better than it seems. So yeah, do your research, speak to as many of them as you possibly can. Don't just go off of one person's experience with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see, you had some photos you wanted to show us and give us a little slideshow.
Oh yeah, I'll give you a little slideshow, a little cheap slideshow.
Center you on the deal there real quick.
I don't have many pictures. I lost a lot of them.
Oh, that's fine.
When I deleted my Facebook. So I mean, I have Facebook again now, but I've lost a lot of the photos. So this is during my first BOST. Actually, this is not far away from Plymouth. We're doing what's called a RAS, a replenishment at sea. This ship here, this is a RFA, Royal Fleet Auxiliary. They are technically a part of the Royal Navy. They're crewed by civilian staff, and their purpose is to obviously deploy with other warships, and be there to refuel, help the warship refuel, restock, replenish, resupply. And it's a very, very dangerous operation. Obviously, said there's ropes and wires going across everywhere. We have to use a rifle to fire one of the ropes across. In fact, your Navy does that as well. When we were in Naples, one of your Arleigh Burkes came up alongside us, and they used an M16 to fire one of the ropes across at us.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. They didn't need to do that, by the way. They need to do it in this particular circumstance. And of course, there I am. I'm swimmer of the watch there, wearing a big, orange. And unfortunately, I've had to jump into the sea a few times, not because somebody fell in, but because they did like an exercise. They threw a big, heavy dummy in the water, and you have to jump off the forecastle. That's the front end of the ship, which is actually quite high. Not as high as your fucking ships. Jesus Christ, American ships are huge.
Oh, well, it's always bigger in America.
Yeah. Even your destroyers are much bigger than ours. Although I don't know if they're bigger than the Type 45s. But yeah, I've got flippers next to me there. I've got like the flare and the rubber dinghy that you have to throw in. But yeah, that was that. I had to do that quite a few bloody times. This is in Cape Verde, the first island we went to. I can't remember the name of it. I am containment party. That's what the blue vest that I'm wearing means.
Okay.
He's got a red one on, so he's fire party. And I'm being told to check Streamlabs, so I'll just bring that up real quick there, mate. You can't see my surname in that picture. That's good. I just realized that. Doobie-doobie-doo, just log it in, mate. Give it a second.
Sure thing.
$5 donation from Mr. Twisted Frenzy. Thank you so much. Were you trained in any form of hand-to-hand combat, melee combat, or was it mostly guns? We were trained to defend ourselves with batons, a 21-inch Casco baton. And of course, you'd have your baton with you when you were on the gangway duty, armed sentry. We had a good training for that. Next one. I was actually growing my hair out then, so I could do something for a bit of charity. This is actually in the Falklands. We were offered by the RAF to have like 10 of our lads go on a flight inside a Nimrod, resupply aircraft. Like, it's really weird as well, man, because you go inside the airplane and there's only like 10 seats.
Okay.
Yeah, and the rest of it's just like empty because that's where they put all pallets and stuff.
Okay.
It's a bit weird. And we got to obviously walk around and look out the windows as we flew over the Falklands. And there's me taking a picture next to the window inside a Nimrod. I think they've been taken out of service since. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Of course, these are the pictures from above. What the Falklands look like. Look, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a relatively boring landscape, but I don't know what goes on the Falklands, but you have a better idea.
I feel so bad for the parachute regiment and the Royal Marines that had to drudge their way through Falkland marshland to go and fight the Argentinians.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, God, awful landscape. Except for some of the beaches, like, you look at some of these beaches and it looks like you're in like a tropical paradise.
Sure.
Couldn't be further from the bloody truth.
Appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah. So there's the pictures of the Falklands. Did I get a picture of Port Royal? Not Port Royal. I forget the name of the bloody place now. The town they have there. This is when we built a snowman on the flight deck in South Georgia. That was a lot of fun. We had these god awful looking icicles hanging off the bridge wings, like we were running past them. Of course, I was also, that's like a Stanley. Thank you very much, Owen Harmon. I completely forgot the name of it. Yeah, Stanley is one of the most boring places in the world as well. God, I was there for their referendum.
Okay.
When they were asked to decide whether they would like to remain British or become Argentinian, and I got to meet their mayor as well.
Remain and leave? What?
I know, right? They did it right. Yeah, I got smashed a few times. But I was down there. But obviously on the way down to South Georgia, I had to be iceberg lookout. Okay. Icebergs, man, that's scary.
Yeah, probably. I can imagine. Like that's a lot of literal and figurative weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, man. Like they were like, right, you talking to me. Like, right, you're going to be iceberg lookout tonight. You've got to stand out on that bridge wing for 4 hours with night vision goggles, and you're going to look out for these icebergs. I'm like, really? Like, yeah. And I put on the Arctic gear, stood out there like, right, listen, look out for growlers. I know that sounds funny. But we don't know what a growler is. A growler iceberg is just a small bit of ice that sticks out of the water. That is massive underneath.
Right. Yeah, sure.
I'm like, if I fuck this up,
right, the whole ship is fucked.
We dead.
Yeah, exactly. You're the Titanic guy.
Yeah. Iceberg right ahead. Luckily, we didn't bump into any icebergs or anything like that. But fuck me, it was freezing.
Sure.
Yeah, it was god awful. But no, it was a nice experience as well. It's a nice experience being down there at the edge of the world, as it were, and seeing wildlife that's pretty much been untouched. And of course, there's the wildlife there. Oh, that's next one. Elephant seal.
That is a that is probably one of the I've seen those before. Those are some ugly creatures.
They can move surprisingly quick. Scribe.
Yeah, I can imagine so.
Shackleton's grave.
Yeah,
This where I am right now. This is on the other side of the island, but on my second deployment when we were down there, I got to go into the whaling station museum.
sure.
You could see Sir Ernest Shackleton's grave from the site. So me and my mate were like, right, let's go over there. But of course, there was a gauntlet of these things.
Right.
And there was their poo everywhere as well. We had to run the gauntlet of not trying to step in their poo or run into them. Because they do charge.
All right.
Believe it or not. Yeah, but that was fun. And of course, there's me stood on a little bit of a hill there in front of thousands and thousands and thousands of penguins.
Looking very serious.
Yeah, could get myself an action photo, you know. Just more penguins there, more penguins. Stood crouched down in front of a normal seal. I actually had one of them charge at me on my second deployment. Just charged out of the grass, surprisingly quick for fat little fuckers.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly fast. Baby penguins.
Oh,
There you go. There you go. Yeah. And you can't see this, but I'll just zoom in. There you go. That's my passing out parade in phase 1 training. Well,
a young man ready to go out into the world.
Looking proud as punch, mate. But there you are. That's all the photos I could pretty much grab. There are more, but
sure.
Sifting through them is a pain in the ass.
Oh, that's fine. No, I appreciate it. So obviously this is very high level, but was there anything else you want? Because my brain's run out of questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to say or had come to mind that I didn't ask or that has come up peripherally in the meantime?
No, not really. I mean, I enjoyed my job as an electronic warfare operator. You know, I spent a great deal of time in the operations room on the bit of kit that I used to operate. Later on, I became a wide area picture supervisor, which I didn't enjoy as much, but I liked being in charge of my own watch at sea. There were times where I was a naughty boy.
Mm-hmm.
When I got sent to Colchester, which is the military detention center.
Uh-oh.
For assault and direct disobedience.
Right.
That was on my first deployment. Oh, didn't get paid. It was bloody heartbreaking when I saw my pay slip for that month. 000. They actually flew me back from the Falklands just to send me there.
Oh boy.
Quite unpleasant. But that was a learning experience. In fact, I learned quite a lot during that experience because it's a tri-service detention center, you see. Okay. So it's mostly full of army guys. And I met so many of these young infantry guys that couldn't read.
Okay.
They couldn't read or write, some of them. I met one of them could only read and write in Welsh.
Well, that's not useful anywhere.
Yeah. I remember speaking to a lot of them. I was like, you lot talk a good game with me around with your Army Navy banter bullshit, but you're all here for like being AWOL, aren't you? And it's like, well, a lot of us went AWOL because of how the army treated them. And a lot of them were treated like shit, Scribe. The British Army does have a bad habit of treating their lads like shit. There was a guy who'd his missus had a miscarriage, and his commander wouldn't let him go home. You know, so he was like, all right, fuck you then. I'm just going to go AWOL.
Oh boy.
You know, there were a lot of cases like that in there. Of course, there were the lads who just wanted to fucking go out on the piss and not come back.
Right.
In fact, well, day 1, week 1 in there, I met a lad who had been arrested for desertion and was being sent to civilian prison.
Oh, geez.
There's a direct to civvy prison if you get proven to have committed desertion.
Huh. I think, and anybody in the chat or otherwise, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I think if you're a deserter in the American military, you're specifically go up to a military prison. But
I guess they just send ours straight to civilian prison. I think you get around 4 years for it, I think.
Oh, geez.
If memory serves. I mean, I could be wrong there, but...
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, are you ready for some questions from the audience? I know people have been asking some things off in the periphery that I've had to sort of set aside because we've been talking. But you ready to be queried by the audience?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's see. Duck Dog says, "How much shit did you float test?"
Well, I mean, other than probably thousands of cigarettes.
Hmm.
Oh, I'll tell you what we float tested once. A fish tank. We snuck a pet goldfish on board. and we had it in a cupboard down the mess deck. And when it died, we snuck it back up the ladder, took it up to the forecastle, and launched it off the side. We even held a quick little funeral service for it.
Oh, jeez.
I wish I had the video of that. It was funny.
Let's see. I know there was some questions prior that I had to set aside. Make sure I didn't. Owen Harmon asked, "You're still young. Do you not want to rejoin?"
I've thought about it. I have thought about it a lot, and there are times when I'm like, right, I'm going back in. But then I think about the consequences of doing so. I think about my son and not really being here. Because on my last deployment, there was a lot of drama at home that I could do nothing about. I mean, I love the idea of it, but the consequences, I don't think they're worth it.
Okay. Let's see. Data Wasteland. How many drinks does it take to make a UK Navy ship dry? What? I don't know what that means. But then Data Wasteland can ask some weird questions.
Considering that we do have booze on our ships.
Now, I honestly don't know if that's true or not on American ships.
I don't think yours are. Your ships are dry.
Okay. Well, now, are there? I assume there are rules about drinking and times of drinking on the ships.
Oh yeah. You have to stick to the 3 beer rule.
Okay.
If you're a rating like I was, able seaman, you can have 3 provided you're not on watch.
Okay.
Of course, that wasn't always the case.
Interesting.
We did have things like mess parties and whatnot. Of course, the crossing the line ceremony where everybody gets smashed.
Wait. I don't know what that question means. Make sure I didn't miss anything. There's some others up here that I didn't see. Completely tangent question, but I was curious, and I don't know what has been the and I'm sure it's different now, but what was the policy on gays in the military when you were serving?
Oh, that's funny, isn't it?
Well, I don't know, because that's been like I mean, over here, the most recent sort of conflict in that regard has been sort of Trump's decisions on transgender people serving in the military, but I don't know what the general rules or policies are over there.
Do you want to grab that super chat before I start?
Yeah, real quick. Thank you, Cryptic. Seaman Watch. Yes, there are plenty of naval jokes to be made about seamen.
Of course there are. It's funny, man, because I heard all those jokes before I went in. They were like, "Oh, here, I had like a party before I went in. Here's soap on a rope, lad." But day 1, week 1, I was very surprised to hear what I did. We were waiting to sign the Official Secrets Act, and a lot of the lads were having haircuts and stuff like that. And we had a Master at Arms speak to us. Their equivalent rank would be a Chief Petty Officer,
sure.
Naval Police. And he'd been in the service a long time. And he started spinning some dips to us and told us about how he used to hunt down gays.
Oh, geez.
In the Navy, before they made it okay to be gay.
So like an internal affairs looking for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they used to do random inspections on ships. They'd random locker searches to make sure the lads had enough heterosexual porn.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, seriously, I'm not joking about it.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh my gosh.
And obviously that they would hunt them down. I don't know whether they would like follow them around in port or anything like that. There were a couple of, at least one secret gay on my ship, and it wasn't me. Before anyone says that, I once found a gay porn mag with battle damage in it, and a blow up sheep leaking battle damage out of it as well in one of the toilets. I was like, God damn, really, dude? Which one of you? Yeah, they used to hunt down the gayers. Yeah, see, I beat you to it, Viper. They used to hunt down the gayers until they made it okay.
When was that? How long ago was that?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
In terms of trannies, there was a like 6'3" built like a barn door chief gunner. Like this guy was a friggin' tank, and he transitioned badly.
Oh no!
And I got to see him once. He was perfectly fine. They've let him stay in. I think we keep transgender people. We once had HMS Manchester. They were outboard of us when we were alongside in Portsmouth, and I was gangway duty, and I came on, and they came back off the piss with that chief petty officer, and I was like, "Oh my god, is that must be him? That must be him!" And that one of the Wrens made a joke as they crossed our flight deck. And she kind of went, "Oh, stop it," and pushed her, and she went flying.
Oh man!
I was like, "Oh, don't laugh! Don't laugh! I'm gonna get in shit."
Hate Camel says, "I like how Bear sticks to his claim that he found a blow up sheep with battle damage."
Hey, I'm not Welsh, dude. I'm not Welsh. Don't blame me.
So now from all that, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, you never saw combat per se during your time in the military.
No, but we came fucking close.
Okay.
Sometime we came close a few times. But I suppose I could tell you about this. Is perfectly fine. We did an Operation Hound, as we were heading down the west coast of Africa, where we received intelligence that there was a boat pretending to be an American yacht that had drugs on it, and we intercepted it. We sat our helo just above it. We basically arrested the 3 Polish men that were on it. We tied a rope to it and we dragged it back to Cape Verde. And they lifted it out of the water with a crane. They cracked the rudder, and £5 million worth of cocaine was inside.
5 million pounds.
Well, Great British pounds, not the weight.
Oh, I was like, I thought about weight, and I was like, 5 million pounds of cocaine.
That's probably closer to what the ocean got a few years ago.
Yeah,
they came back with just huge, just blocks of the stuff when they were doing interdiction operations in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, for a second there, I was like, wait a second. I don't know math. How many tons is 5 million pounds of cocaine?
No Kung Fu Joe, but we did steal the little flag off of it. And we
there you go.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well,
I actually genuinely felt bad for those 3 guys, because they were arrested by the Ladette, African Special Police, and they probably would have gone to prison in Africa.
Oh, yeah, no, that'd be
3 little white boys.
That would be unfortunate.
Yeah, I feel bad for them.
Let's see. Steve says he's British. No, I know he's British. It just took me a second because I'm a dyed-in-the-wool American. So when you talk about pounds, my first thought goes.
No, I get. I should have said that first.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's more funny that I misunderstood. Let's see. Midnight Exile says, "I do not want to go to jail in Cape Verde." Yeah, probably not.
I don't really want to go to Cape Verde. I mean, a lot of the islands aren't really developed. I mean, the first one where you see me as duty, the lads were coming back and telling me, man, they like the toilets that they had in some of these like bars that they had in hotels weren't toilets. They were just tubes sticking out of the ground.
Yeah.
I saw somebody like, and I did see something similar when I actually got to go ashore. A lady who was living in a hollowed out, well, not hollowed out, obviously, but living in a cracked boat that had been grounded, climbed out of the boat and then had a shit on the ground outside and then climbed back in again.
Oh God.
Yeah, you had all these little kids like begging as well.
Oh no.
While they would try to drink. It was annoying, but.
Hey. And Steve Lazone asks, any bar fights? I assume bar fights of note. Was that a
there was one in particular that's noteworthy.
Mm.
And I didn't actually get hit, nor did I throw any punches. I don't know how I managed to do it, but it was International Navy Days in Belgium. You had the US Navy there. A couple of your Arleigh Burke destroyers were there.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Russian Navy. And my God, their ships are dirty. Like all we saw was black clouds approaching us. And they turn up in this god awful green camo, like not even ships, just boats with these huge missiles on the sides of them. Like if you fire that, your ship is fucked.
Right.
They had Sunburn. That's SSN-22 Sunburn. Fucking beast of a missile, by the way. Yeah, you had the Russians. You had the Irish in their little like one boat that they have. You had, I think the French Navy was there, the German Navy was there, and they all piled into this one bar, and somebody threw a pint.
Okay.
And then that was it.
No.
And I managed to duck dive and cover and get outside, but I caught a glimpse of my friend saying, "Stop the violence!" And there were people just getting knocked out left, right, and Chelsea. Proper huge bar fight between all these different navies.
Oh boy.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
Right.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, my brain's run out. Was there anything else that came to mind or you'd like to talk about real quick?
No, I don't think there's anything. I could sit here and start telling stories, but I think you wanted to just talk about the Navy itself, really.
Yeah, I'm just there's like with all these shows I've done so far. There's just I think it's more a reflection of my lack of sort of specific or worldly experience that I'm more curious about. Other people who have had some very focused careers or experiences and things that I have not and likely never will do so. So I'm just kind of like a sponge for this stuff. And like I say, in the course of doing this YouTube thing, I've come across so many interesting people who have done things that are very specialized or are career paths that never would have even come across my own. And like I say, you and Tailed and Diesel Dave and a couple other people are in that category. People that I know specifically have had these things. I'm sure there are plenty of people in audience and otherwise who know stuff that I don't, obviously, because I don't know everything. But yeah, you were sort of at the top of my list, but for whatever reason, I never got around to like saying, "Hey, Bear, you want to come on and talk?"
You're busy, mate.
Things come up, and I've had a lot of people send me pitches like, "Hey, I know a thing about a thing. I could be on your show." I'm like, yeah, I'll think about it.
Why not?
Yeah, sure. And I call this. Sorry.
You could have Cryptic on.
Now, what possibly could Cryptic know that I don't?
Well, I think you know.
Yeah, no, I've been thinking about trying to given the climate over here and everything else. I was thinking about trying to get somebody on who'd been through the immigration process, the citizenship process.
That's not what I meant, but yeah, that's a good idea as well.
Oh, is there something else? Because that's what I was thinking of.
I assume he's open about it. He has service under his belt as well.
Oh, well, sure, that too. But no, yeah. Well, anyway, just not to go too far off the ranch on that. But hey,
you went there, Scribe. Sorry, mate. Mrs. Wizard Frenzy throws another $5 at me. Thank you very much, mate. At least tell me the Irish Navy put up a good fight in the bar, if the ocean. I can't remember how they did in the war games that we did. I also can't remember really seeing them in the bar either. They may have gone to a different one.
Oh, I guess maybe one last question. So Britain has its own navy. Ireland has its own navy of a dinghy or something.
Well, the Republic of Ireland, not
Republic of Ireland. So how many individual navies make up the UK military?
well, I need one.
Only one. Oh, so they're all part of one, but there's like different divisions or something.
Well, the Republic of Ireland is a different country.
Oh, well, okay, okay,
Like there isn't like a Scottish Navy and a Welsh Navy or anything like that.
okay. Yeah,
Our armed forces are amalgamated.
okay, and that's what I meant, because I don't understand how the whole, because when I think of the United Kingdom, I also think of like Ireland and Scotland and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah, so it's because I'm a dumb American. What do I know? All right. Well, hey, like I say, my brain's kind of cut out, and I don't want to keep any longer because I know it's getting late over there. But hey, Bear, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about the Navy and all that good stuff and your experiences therein.
That's not a problem, mate. It was my pleasure.
And everybody, thank you for joining us and taking part. Can't say when the next episode will be. I know I've got at least 3 or 4 people out there who have pitched me ideas. It's all a matter of scheduling, and I've got some. My birthday is coming up, and there's some things they're going to throw a wrench into scheduling for that in the near future. But I'll figure that out. But again, Bear, thank you for coming on, and as us Americans do say, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you very much. You see, there's a difference between the UK and US. You don't hear that from British people.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I got to meet the mayor of Miami when we visited Miami, and he shook my hand, even though I was like, sir, I'm covered in paint. And he was like, don't worry about it. Shake my hand. Thank you for your service, sir. And that really freaked me out.
Well, if nothing else, I think there is at least I can speak from experience. My father and both my grandfathers served in various aspects of the military. My grandfathers were in World War II, one in the Air Force and the other one in the Navy. I think for the most part, there's always this underlying, there but for the grace of God sort of notion for those of us that don't serve in the military towards those that have. And I'm glad that has changed a lot since Vietnam, because like I say, the military's popularity often coincides with the popularity of whatever military conflict they're currently involved in. Mm-hmm. But since 9/11 and everything else, I think that's taken a shift, which, good news, bad news, in the sense that, respect people that put their lives on the line. Bad news in that we need them out there. Because you wish for a world where that isn't necessary. But anyway, I could wax philosophic for quite a while on that point. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Bear, thanks again for coming on and talking to us. And everybody, we'll see you on the next show.
Bye, guys.
Bye.